let everybody know. We are going to be recording the session, but we will not be recording the breakout rooms. So
Okay, no worries.
sorry about that.
Not at all. So yeah, so it is a bit. If you think of it, can either be something drastic or something that is really just a shift in our thinking about our own self-concept. And it signals this invitation for growth, which really can have a lasting impact on our lives. And it is actually a normal part of an adult life, right? Sometimes it may feel as though there's something not quite right inside of you, something that's not aligning. Maybe your work is not aligning with who you believe you are now. That is also a transition, right? And it can start as a feeling, like a nagging feeling, for example, and that things need to change. And that happened to me, for example. So that's the type of transition I went through. The thing I'd like you to hear most is that transitions, whether they're external or internal, are always this huge opportunity for us. And I really want you to think of it as a huge opportunity. And so, the definition of transitions that's written here is by Linda Rossetti, who's an expert in transitions and who I trained under. And she says that transitions are an incredible invitation to unlock the enormous potential that is resident within each of us. So I really want you to absorb that at the moment, because if you're feeling in a place right now in your life that you feel like you might want something more, there's something shifting inside of you. I want you to view this as an opportunity, and it's really a great invitation to explore yourself and rediscover yourself. So all those things that you put in the chat, those are all correct. So is there any questions on that? Any comments on that kind of definition of transition? No, if not, I'll move on. So there's just going to be some concepts I'd like to kind of go through. And one of the main, really a really important concept is the difference between transition and change. And these terms are often used interchangeably. However, they are very different. So again, as I mentioned before, transitions occur when there's really a shift, right, in what holds value and meaning to us. And usually they involve outcomes which are unknown and is usually internal and usually a choice. Change, on the other hand, is a process by which we kind of alter particulars of our situation and we leave our sense of self intact. It usually involves a known outcome and is very goal oriented, and it's pretty situational. So I'll give you an example. Change could be a move to a new city, for example, or a shifting of a new job, or the replacement of a manager, and sometimes we feel that if we can fix things, by changing the situation. And oftentimes changing the situation itself won't fix everything. We have to instead really re-examine our changing identity and values. So there's a really interesting quote from William Bridges that if you haven't read this book, it's a really good book. It's called Transitions: Making Sense of Life's Changes. He says, without a transition, a change is just like a rearrangement of the furniture. So unless transition happens, the change won't work because it doesn't take. So does that make sense? You kind of get the feel of the difference between change and transition? Okay. Any questions, any comments? Okay. So there's just a few more concepts, and then I, would like you to participate with some of your thoughts. So what you may be experiencing in terms of triggers right now is normal. And in fact, there are 4 types of triggers to a transition. And I've seen these different situations with many of my clients. And I'd like you, when I'm going through those, maybe you can think about, are you experiencing any of these triggers? So the first are unplanned events, like I just discussed, like a job loss, a divorce. And in those situations, we often want to go back to normal, like to what happened before the trigger happened. Like we want to go back to safety, right? The second trigger is when change is desired. This is when you may be feeling stuck or frustrated with your current situation. Maybe you're in a job that you're feeling not fulfilled anymore and you want to change, but you just don't know how. right? So that's a second type of trigger. The third type of trigger is when you anticipate change. Like maybe you're looking forward to a milestone 50th birthday or graduation or retirement, and you just want to know, how do I prepare for this, right? These are milestones in our life. And then the fourth is this kind of feeling of uncertainty. You know, you just something of feeling. I talked about that feeling earlier, and that's just something that you want to just desire to pursue your potential. So I can tell you that when I went through my career transition, you know, about 5 years ago, it was a really combination between number 2 and number 4. I really felt like there was something inside of me that I needed to pursue more, and I wanted something needed to change. You know, everything was fine, but there was still that little feeling inside of me. So I'd like you to just kind of put it out to the group. You know, look at those 4 types of triggers, and if you could just put in the chat, if you don't mind, what number resonates with you? Is there more than one? Are you going through all of them? You know, what's happening right now in your life that is maybe causing you to consider your next steps? So maybe just put the number of the trigger in the chat. Is there anyone sharing? Oh, you're on mute, Marissa.
Yeah, 1 and 3, number 3, 1 and 4, 4 and a little of 2, 2, but then followed by 1, 2,
Mm,
another 2.
yeah. So that signals to me, and it should signal to you, that you're not alone, right? And that we all experience these kind of triggers. And again, just to reiterate, it can be external, but oftentimes it is really internal, right? So this signals that we are really experiencing, we're in a transition, or we're about to get into a transition. And so thanks for sharing that. I just wanted to kind of feel for how everybody is, what's going on in your life right now. So we'll move on. And this is another distinction and something interesting which I'd like to go through, and really is, what are the phases of a transition, right? And that may be relevant to you. So whether major or minor, all transitions have these different phases. And the first phase is what's called a trigger, which we just talked about. We talked about the different 4 types of triggers. And one thing that's interesting is all the triggers, they start with an ending. And what I mean by that is that endings have to be dealt with before we move on to whatever comes next in our lives, right? It's kind of like a clearing process. So we have to be able to let go in our lives of what no longer fits us or is adequate or appropriate in our lives. So I'll give you an example of this. Maybe you might be feeling triggered by a feeling that you want to explore more of your potential. You might be wanting to go for a job that's higher level than your current position, right? And then that's triggering you to want to pursue that job. When this trigger happens, there has to be an ending. There's an ending of something. Of course, it could be the ending of your current job, but it's also could be the ending of your limiting belief that you are not qualified enough to pursue the next thing, to the next job. So in order to move to the next phase, you have to get rid of those or reduce those limiting beliefs. So that's the first phase. And the second phase is the decision. And that's that in between time where we're like, okay, now we're feeling triggered. Now what do we do? So it's a time of rediscovery of really who you are and what you really want, right? And that's when the real business of transition takes place. So this could also be a time of confusion and overwhelm, and because we often don't know how to go about doing this. And then the third phase is action and the new beginning, right? So this is when we actually launch those activities that we determined that we're going to do in the second phase. And so it could be that this phase could be actually applying for that job, or pursuing a business, or going back to school, whatever we have decided in that neutral zone phase that we wanted to do. And that action phase really takes the courage to do those things. So So those are, you maybe you want to think about your own life and what phase you might be in right now, at this time.
We just had one question, like a bit of a clarification.
Yes.
Did you mean like getting closure to open yourself up for better opportunities? Was that kind of what you were implying?
Absolutely. In terms of starting with an ending, yeah. Like if we're being held back by things, it could be internal, like that feeling that I'm not qualified enough. And we have to get rid of those, clear that in our, these things limit us. So in order to move forward, absolutely, those are the things that need to be clear. So yes, exactly. So we're going to get into a little bit of an exercise, but before we do, I just want you to really, pay attention to those signals, which may be indicating that you are wanting to go into a different path. It could be that you're completely satisfied with your career right now, but maybe it's a personal side of your life where you're looking to needs nurturing, or where it's a transition phase. So, and it all starts with this inner reflection. So what I'd like you to do now, if you don't mind, is take out a piece of paper and a pen. And I'm going to ask you two questions. And what I'd like you to do is first reflect on your own for maybe 5 minutes in terms of these two questions. And then I think there's 10, we could probably do 2 breakout rooms, right?
Yeah.
We talk about
Yeah.
them in the breakout rooms. So let me give you the first question. And the first question is, what is it time to let go of in my own life right now? What is it time to let go of in my own life right now? So this could be an attitude. It could be a limiting belief. It could be a goal. It could even be a part of your life, or an assumption about yourself that, maybe it is not serving you well right now. I can give you an example from my own experience, is that when I transitioned into my career, I had to let go of the belief that I needed approval from everyone before I made the transition. So that was something I needed to let go of before I could move on. And that was a huge letting go process for me. So that's the first question. And the second question is this: what is standing backstage in the wings of my life, waiting to make its entrance? What is standing backstage in the wings of my life, waiting to make its entrance? So in this question, it could be internally, it could come as an external event. It could be something that's been nagging at you for a while. And that's just kind of in your awareness. For me, and when I was transitioning, it was the desire to explore more of my talents. No more, like in that case, it was I loved writing, and I really wanted to explore that. And I really wanted to bring that front and center outside of the wings, right? And so it's important to really ask yourselves these questions. So give yourself 5 minutes and take some time to take note of these questions. If there's any questions, let me know.
So Kavita, after they spend a little bit of time, then you want me to go ahead and open up the breakout room so they
I
can.
think so, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think it would be good to kind of have a bit of a discussion. And then what we can do is we can come back and discuss if anybody wants to share.
Sure.
Not easy questions, I know. But Can get a little emotional, can it? I know when I first answered them, they were a little emotional for me.
Yeah, Kavita, we have another clarification question. Are we talking more on a personal or a professional level?
Whatever's coming out for you. You're a whole being, so whatever's coming out for you right now is what you should write down. There's no limits. So I don't know if you want to start the.
I'll go ahead and open up the breakout rooms and you all can spend a little bit of time discussing and then it'll give you a warning when we're going to be closing them out and then everyone will just come back to the main meeting. So I'll go ahead and open those up.
Great.
Is everyone seeing? Yeah, okay, good.
Did you put 5 in each? Did you put 2 rooms?
I did well because minus the two of us, so there's like
Oh,
there's 4 and 4. So
that's weird how so many people, like so many from 48 people.
very strange. It's really strange when stuff like this happens. We had this happen once before,
Yeah,
and so I share the feedback form at the end. I think I mentioned to you that I have a new like immediate feedback form that I try and get people to do. And for that session, I think part of it was kind of focused on like working moms. So I don't know if maybe that time, like this evening time, was like a really bad time for that demographic.
yeah. So
But that's the only time I've ever had so few people join. It's so strange. And Kavita, I think somebody was trying to Zoom to do the bombing again.
no
I
way.
I had to kick somebody out of the meeting because I went back and I looked at the registration and they were not registered. So I'm going to have to talk to Eventbrite and figure out what is happening because you can't get access to the Zoom unless you join.
Hmm.
I don't know. There was the person who came on and they tried to record
Just now?
like earlier in the meeting and I had to kick them out.
Oh my God.
So I looked on my list and the name that it said was not somebody who had registered. So I don't know what's going on.
That's a security issue with Eventbrite.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to maybe think of, we might have to transition to something else. And I also don't like that they make it so hard for you to join the meeting. I think that's part of the reason why we get drop off sometimes.
Yeah, why do you have to use Eventbrite if you're not charging? Just do it from Zoom. Like just give you know what I mean? I don't think
Yeah, I mean, I guess because,
if you're charging, I can understand, but if you're not charging, then it should
yeah,
be like, here's the Zoom link to enter.
right. And just not share it until like 2
Yeah.
hours before or
Just
whatever.
get their email addresses and then no, you can send
Yeah.
a Zoom link. You can send
I
them.
guess it is easier to manage like the
Yeah.
signups, you know, because it's like a place to hold the signups. Because otherwise,
Right.
I guess they
Yeah.
would be emailing me. You know, I don't know. I'm gonna have to talk to Melanie about it. But this is getting really strange, and the fact that we've had so few people join, like,
How do you think it's going? Is it
yeah,
like,
I think it's going fine. I mean, I hope that people are, usually I can see if people are like talking, but I can't seem to tell if people are talking.
yeah. It's weird for me because I could just see you. I
I
only
know,
see 2
I
other
know,
people.
I know. That's why I stopped
Sometimes
pinning.
I'm like, am I talking to myself or is that
I used to pin the host, and then the same thing happened where I could only see the host, and I was
Yeah.
like, I don't like when I can't see everyone that I'm talking to. So I can see everybody, and it's unfortunate that you can't.
How
Uh,
many people are on the screen? Are
There's 9 or 10.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, well, we'll make the best of it.
Yeah,
Hopefully that people will contribute.
yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
Very strange, really
Maybe
strange.
you can share your feelings of these two questions if nobody's talking.
Yeah, I'll think of something.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. Right. I've got something just in case.
Mm,
Yeah, just let me know because I think it gives people like a 1-minute warning, so they can finish up once.
did you put it for 10 minutes?
I didn't put a timer on.
Oh, you want me to just let you know? Oh, I
Yeah.
see. Oh, I thought you put a time. I don't know. What do you think? How long have they been in there?
Um,
Maybe give them a couple more minutes?
yeah, I think they've been in there maybe like 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So it feels longer to us, I think, than it probably does.
Yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunate. There isn't more people. Oh, well.
Yeah, really strange. I mean, I think we're gonna have to start just reevaluating all this, and maybe it's because people are starting to realize that we videotape it. So, like you said, maybe they don't feel an incentive to join because they can get the videotape, maybe, or recording.
Yeah.
So maybe we have to stop doing that. Even
Yeah,
though,
I know some people who like some organizations that don't. Because it's like if you don't show up, then you're not gonna,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. I know
There's
for us, it's good because we could like use it for
I
marketing
understand. Yeah.
resources. But yeah, maybe what we can do is we can record it and we'll have it, but we don't freely share it. Like what we're gonna do for yours is I already told Melanie that unless somebody asks me for it specifically, like
Yeah.
I didn't share with everybody that they're gonna get a copy of this after the meeting because I'm gonna just say, if you ask for it, then I'll give it to you, but not,
Yeah.
not gonna
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
a standard thing, so.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe you can give them a 2-minute warning.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's 8, so we have about, yeah.
yeah, and then we can, they can discuss as a group for a few minutes, hopefully, people have things to share. Yeah, and like you said, we give reminder, like there's tons of
Yeah. I
reminders,
was
like,
quite impressed. I was like, oh, 2 hours left, 1 hour left.
yeah, so strange.
It's okay. You've done your best. There's nothing you can do.
I know, I feel terrible. It's like, welcome back. People are starting to come back in.
Great. Great. Wonderful. How was that? Good, good. I know these questions are not easy and could be feeling a little vulnerable, but just if anybody would like to share, and maybe we want to take off the recording for this time for this session,
Yeah,
so that
we
people
can
feel
pause,
comfortable.
we can
Yeah,
pause the record, so.
sure, sure. So, oh, not sure what's going on here. There we go. Um, so we talked about transitions, we talked about how it differs from change, and as well as the triggers and phases of a transition, and we talked about some of the questions we can ask ourselves. So now, how do we actually confidently navigate transitions, right? So So this again is that second phase that we're going through. And one of the key things to be able to confidently do this is to really understand your why. And one really important process that I take my clients through is to determine your ikigai. I'm not sure if any of you know what this is. If you've heard the term, you might have. But it's really an important process which can really help you understand, what it is. What's your reason for being? And in fact, what ikigai is it's a Japanese term for a reason for being. And it originates in one of the Japanese villages of Okinawa, which is one of the world's blue zones. And the blue zones is an area in the world where the highest number of centurions live. There was actually a Netflix series on. I'm not sure if anybody watched that.
Yeah.
But they looked at, why do these people in these blue zones live for so long, and why they, why? And one of the reasons was, especially in Japan, was they live by the concept of ikigai. And it's really your why, and it's really found at the convergence of these four elements. What you're good at, which are your strengths. What do you love? So your passions, what does the world need? So this is related to your values. And what can you be paid for, or what can bring abundance into your life? And that can be related to your profession, right? So there's really a step-by-step process to discover that. And it can be shown in this Venn diagram. You can see the four circles, and then the center of the circle is your ikigai. And again, it's what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. So some of the questions that you can ask yourself, and we talked about this a little bit, Sydney, you mentioned this, and you were looking at your skills, and so like ask yourself these questions, like what are my three greatest strengths? What talents come to me really naturally? And am I using those talents right now to the best of my ability? And if not, why not? How can I use my talents more? Under the passions piece, ask yourself, what am I really passionate about now? What, for example, when I was a child, what did I do that, the time would go by for hours, and can I bring that same similar type of passion into what I'm doing now? It could be, for example, art, it could be music, it could be anything else that you have maybe buried underneath the everyday life that we live, right? And then you can ask yourself, what do I value now? And values change. I mean, it could be your values could change over the years. Maybe 10 years ago, maybe you're valued climbing up the corporate ladder. And now it's more about giving back to the community or serving people. Who do you want to serve? How do you want to show up in this world, right? And then the fourth type of questions you can ask yourself is, what was I paid for before, and what can I be paid for? What can bring abundance into my life, which kind of utilizes my skills, passions, and values? So it's really about thinking outside of the box, right? Sometimes we get so used to being in a role that we've been in for many years, like I did. I was in a role for 25 years. And you just think that becomes part of you. But when you go through this kind of exercise, which really opens up a lot, different opportunities open up, and this positive energy gets created in your life where you can actually think, okay, well, maybe I could do this because I really value this. I'm really passionate about this, and I have the skills to go for it. So the work really becomes then, once you determine your ikigai, then it becomes, does your current work and life, does it align with that? And if it doesn't, then why not? And if we're going to design the next chapter or the next stage in our life, shouldn't we design it to make us fulfilled and happy, right? Why shouldn't we, right? And so I'm not suggesting at this stage that everybody, just leaves their job and pursues something completely different. But what I am suggesting is that how can you bring those elements, those four different types of elements, into what you're doing? It could be a side hustle. It could be some pursuing, something, a hobby. It could be something that makes you outside of work, or it could be even in work. Like if you're looking for another position and you feel that the current position is not utilizing your strengths, passions, and values, what can you do to pursue the next position, right? Um, so what some ways that you can pursue these opportunities is, if you determine that there's something you want to really do, network and research that area. You know, you could join communities and groups in that certain area that you've determined, and you can up level your skills if necessary. And you can also seek guidance and accountability. So, just as an example, if let's say you have you're really skilled in science, you're a scientist, you've been in the scientific industry for a long time, and you're really good at it, but you're really passionate about, let's say, helping women and girls, educating underprivileged women and girls. How do those two things connect? So it's about, maybe you can open up a school, or maybe you can teach courses in science for children or for girls. So it's just a way of bringing out your skills, your passions, and your values into what you're doing. And I've seen so many examples of this in my clients who have been like, whoa, like they didn't even think about the opportunities that were available to them. But when you do open up and really think about your why, then it's really life changing. And that happened to me. And when I did this exercise myself, I determined that my ikigai was to help women uncover theirs, to help them figure out their purpose. And I didn't really know how to do that in the very beginning. So I did these things. I networked. I joined groups. I up-leveled my skills. I became a coach. I started a podcast. I didn't know anything about podcasting, but I did. So it's just about really being opening up yourself to these opportunities and possibilities. And again, just going back to what I was saying in the beginning, is that some transitions are really not something that we should be afraid of. They really are something that, if we look at them in a positive light, they're really an opportunity to rediscover who we are and what we want. And it's an exciting to it's a growth period for us, and you can really design your life the way you want. And there's everyday barriers that come in our way, but if we take the step-by-step process of rediscovery, I think it really does open up a lot. So is there any thoughts on what I shared around ikigai and finding your why? I know that was a lot. I just kind of went through that quickly, but any thoughts, comments? No? Any comments in the chat there?
Vita, I have a question for you. When you did some networking and you were exploring, did you find that people were very open to like sharing their expertise, or like helping you get to where you wanted to be? Because that's one thing that I know that people often struggle with is asking others for advice or help. They just feel like, well, everyone's so busy and they don't want to do that. So I'm just curious, like what your experience was when you were kind of exploring a new phase for yourself.
It's a great question. I found that people are so open to sharing. People, it sounds terrible, but people love talking about themselves, right? People
Yeah.
people love to share what they do. And if you approach it in kind of like a way that it's not like, I'm looking for a job, but it's like, I really want to understand what you do because I'm really interested in this particular area. I know that you're an expert in this area. I'd love to get just a 5 or 10-minute informational talk with you, just to understand more about what you do, how I could potentially, move into this area, not like to get a job, but just so in answer to your question, yes, I found people are very, very open.
Yeah, that's good to know. I always recommend that to people who come on office hours as well, because I do feel like most people want to help.
Mhm.
But I know it's a scary ask sometimes. So
Yes,
yeah.
yes. And I think another thing is that I think we're often, especially as women, I think most all are here, women are here. We hesitate often to seek guidance because we're maybe I don't know why, but I don't know if you see that, Marissa, but there's guidance sometimes and accountability. It's difficult for us to ask.
Mhm.
And one of the things that's really important is also that accountability piece, because if we're going to move forward into the next phase of our transition and do that action phase, we have to be confident. In order to be confident, you have to take action. So it's not all about just figuring out, not just, but figuring out the why. It's about, okay, well, now that I know, what am I actually going to do to make this happen?
Right.
So you need somebody there to, to be an accountability partner. So that's why, join groups, communities,
Mhm.
coaches, mentors or next group,
Yep.
me,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So,
We
so
have a couple, we do have a couple questions. I'm gonna go ahead and pause the recording